A school bus carrying 26 children vanished without a sound. No mayday, no wreckage. In less than an hour, they were gone, erased from the world. But they weren't lost. They were hidden. Don't forget to subscribe for true crime that uncovers what others missed. It began with heat, dust, and laughter. A yellow school bus rumbling through the fields of California's Central Valley. Children pressed to the glass, tracing the outline of distant mountains. No one on that bus. Not the shy first grader clutching his lunchbox, not the teenage troublemaker in the back, not the soft-spoken driver who'd driven these roads for 20 years, could know that before the sun set, they would vanish without a trace. And when they were finally found, nothing in Chowchilla would ever be the same. The bell at Dairyland Elementary cracked the stillness, sharp as a rifle shot. Chowchilla's afternoon sun bleached the blacktop, baking up the smell of hot rubber, pencil shavings, and dried grass. Children flooded the yard, wild and loud, a stampede of backpacks and scuffed sneakers. Ed Ray leaned against the wheel of his battered yellow bus, cap low over his eyes, waiting for the familiar faces. His wife had ironed his shirt that morning, but by now it was sweat stuck to his back. He wiped his brow, watching his passengers form up like little ducklings. Mike Marshall, 13 and tall for his age, strode up first, holding his little sister Mary's hand. Mike's jaw was set, eyes narrowed, already squinting at the world the way grown men do. "Hey, Mr. Ray," he called, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Afternoon, Mike. Got your sister too, I see." Ed smiled, warm but tired. Mary clung tight to Mike, her lunchbox rattling. "Can I sit by the window?" she whispered, voice small. "Of course, sweetheart," Ed said, waving her on. "Same as always." Behind them, Jeff Brown, a wiry, anxious kid with nervous hands, bickered with Angela Gonsalves over who got the back seat. Angela, sharp-tongued and stubborn, jabbed him with her elbow. "Move it, Brown. Ladies first." Ed chuckled as he called roll, barely glancing at his clipboard. He knew every kid by heart, who needed a nudge to hurry, who might cry if their friend ignored them, who liked to count cows through the windows. The smallest, Lisa Harlow, hesitated on the bottom step, scanning for a bully she feared. "Up you go, Lisa. Sit near me if you want." Ed's voice was gentle. Lisa gave him a quick, grateful nod and hurried to the front row. 26 kids, same as yesterday. Same as every day. Ed shut the folding door, exhaled slow. He craved this routine, the clatter of seats, the click of the gear shift, the surety that nothing bad ever happened in a place like Chowchilla. The bus rumbled down Avenue 21, past endless rows of almond and cotton. Children's voices rose in a patchwork of laughter, dares, and half-told secrets. Mike was showing Mary how to fold a perfect paper airplane when Ed spotted something ahead. A blue van canted across the road shoulder at a strange angle. A thread of unease knotted in his gut. "Hold on," Ed muttered, tapping the brakes. "That's not supposed to be there." Angela noticed too. She peered out the window, nose pressed to the glass. "Is that guy wearing a mask?" she blurted. Ed squinted. The man's face was hidden beneath a stocking cap. Another figure stepped from behind the van, bigger, clutching something heavy. Sunlight flashed on metal, a shotgun. "Everybody stay in your seats," Ed barked, voice suddenly hard. Kids froze. The noise snuffed out like a candle. Mike's hand found Mary's. Jeff ducked down, whimpering. The first man strode into the road, mask distorting his voice. "Open the door," he shouted, banging the glass with the butt of his gun. Ed's heart hammered in his chest. For a split second, he thought of running, of gunning the engine, but then he glanced in the mirror, saw Lisa's round eyes, wide as quarters, saw little Timmy trembling. He reached for the lever. The door hissed open. 2 men climbed aboard. The taller one, nervous eyes, sweat streaking the mask, brandished his shotgun. The shorter kept his hand in his pocket, fiddling with something. "Nobody move," "Nobody scream," the tall one snarled, voice cracking. Angela's mouth hung open, breath caught in her throat. Jeff clamped both hands over his ears. A sob welled up from the back row. The men moved fast. One herded Ed to the rear. The other swept the aisle, gun leveled. "Get up, out, now!" Ed tried to catch Mike's gaze, to pass him some adult reassurance. But Mike was staring at the gun, shaking. One by one, the kids were forced from their seats. Mary's fingers slipped from Mike's. Lisa clung to Ed's sleeve, crying soundlessly. Outside, a third man waited by the van, revolver gleaming at his hip. "Hurry up," he barked. The almond fields, endless and sun-baked, suddenly felt like prison walls. Angela tried to argue. "Where are you taking us? Our parents—" The tall man shoved her forward, muttering, "Shut up and move." Ed stumbled out last, trying to shield the smallest with his body. He counted. 1, 2, 3. 26. They were lined up, trembling, forced into the back of the van, darkness swallowing them whole. As the last child climbed in, Ed looked back at his empty bus, engine idling, the smell of gasoline thick in the air, sunlight pooling on empty seats. It would be hours before anyone in Chowchilla realized the nightmare had begun. The doors slammed shut. Inside, the van was hotter, darker than any closet. Children huddled together, Angela with a scraped knee, Jeff hiccuping tears, Lisa pressed against Ed's arm, still clutching her lunchbox as if it could keep her safe. Ed's mind raced. Stay calm. Keep them together. Survive. Outside, the bus ticked in the heat, abandoned. On the horizon, thunderheads gathered over the mountains, and the world spun on, oblivious. The doors of the van slammed shut with a hollow boom that seemed to steal the breath from the world. Inside, 26 children and Ed Ray were sealed into a rolling, windowless tomb. The heat hit first. Thick, stifling, carrying the sour tang of old sweat and something like fear. For a moment, nobody moved. The darkness was so complete, it felt alive. A child whimpered. Someone else gasped for breath. Ed Ray pressed his palm to the metal floor, steadying himself, listening for any hint of what was to come. A gun barrel jabbed his shoulder. "Down! Face the floor!" Ed obeyed, gritting his teeth. He heard Mike whisper to Mary, "Stay with me. Don't let go." Mary's small hand slipped into his, trembling. Angela, pressed to the far wall, clenched her fists until her knuckles blanched. The van rumbled to life, lurching forward with a squeal of tires. The noise inside was a chorus of stifled sobs, ragged breathing, the slap of someone's backpack shifting in the dark. Jeff's voice broke through, high and thin. "Where are they taking us? Shut up!" snapped one of the masked men from the front. A silence descended, heavier than before. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time twisted in the dark. Sweat trickled down Ed's spine. He forced himself to take shallow breaths, to stay alert. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 26. He whispered names in his mind, trying to keep them all together, even if just in memory. Lisa, wedged between Angela and the steel wall, began to cry quietly. Angela, swallowing her own fear, reached over and squeezed her hand. "It's going to be okay, Lisa. They're not going to hurt us. They just want money or something." But her voice wavered. The van jerked to a stop. Everyone froze. A metallic clang. Footsteps outside, shouting, muffled through the walls. The rear doors yanked open, flooding the van with harsh white light. The children squinted, blinking, eyes red and swollen. The air outside smelled of dry grass and exhaust. "Out!" barked a new man, broader than the others, face hidden behind a bandana. He pointed his gun at Ed first. "You, get up! Help the little ones!" Ed crawled forward, hauling Lisa to her feet, then Mary, then Jeff, guiding them into the blinding light. They blinked and stumbled, disoriented. Angela glanced around, searching for landmarks. Almond trees, distant barns, anything familiar. There was nothing but open field and the shape of a second vehicle, a box truck, long and low, painted dull white. The kidnappers moved quickly, herding them out of the van and into the truck. The children resisted, but fear made them pliable. Mike tried to plant his feet, whispering to Mary, "Stay behind me, no matter what." A masked man grabbed him by the collar, shoving him forward. "Move!" Inside the truck, the heat was worse, the air heavier. The door clanged shut. They were plunged back into darkness, thicker, deeper than before. The smell was different here. Diesel, hay, metal, and terror. Someone started sobbing, maybe Lisa, maybe Jeff. The sound echoed. Angela found her voice, thin and sharp. "Why are you doing this?" she called to the darkness. No answer, just the hum of the engine and the scraping of feet as children huddled closer together. Mike put his arm around Mary. "We're going to be okay," he said, voice trembling but steady. "We'll figure this out. They can't keep us forever." Ed felt his way to the back, his knees finding the edge of a cardboard box. He knocked softly, 2 short raps. "It's Ed. Is everyone here?" One by one, the older kids answered. Angela, Jeff, the twins, Emily and Grace. The roll call, whispered in the dark, felt like a ritual, proof they were still alive, still together. The truck started to move. They couldn't see out, couldn't even guess the direction. The floor vibrated beneath them, shaking with every bump in the road. Lisa pressed her hands to her ears. "I want to go home," she whispered, rocking back and forth. Mary buried her face in Mike's shoulder, breathing fast and shallow. Jeff lay flat on his back, counting cracks in the plywood above, trying to pretend he was anywhere but here. Angela crawled toward the wall, fingers probing for a crack, a seam, any way out. She found nothing. The drive went on forever. At times, the truck stopped and started again, as if changing course or waiting for something. Each pause brought a spike of hope, then a deeper drop into despair. After what felt like a lifetime, the truck ground to a final stop. Silence. The children listened, straining for any clue. Ed put his hand on Mike's shoulder. "Stay calm. No matter what happens, we stay together." A key turned. The door screeched open. Flashlights stabbed the dark, dazzling their eyes. The kidnappers climbed in, faces monstrous in the glare. "You, old man! Help us move them!" one snapped, dragging Ed forward. The children cowered as the men tossed boxes aside, clearing a path to a trap door in the truck's floor. The air shifted, heavy with dread. "We're going down there?" Lisa whispered, voice almost gone. Angela pulled her close. "Not alone. We go together." The kidnappers forced the children to descend, one by one, into the pitch-black hole beneath the truck. A rickety ladder led down, and the stench of earth and rot rose up to meet them. Mike hesitated at the top, fear finally showing in his eyes. He looked at Ed. "Will you come?" Ed nodded. "I'm right behind you, son." As Mike climbed down, the air grew colder, thicker, pressing against his chest. The ladder rattled under his weight. Mary followed, crying softly. When the last child disappeared into the black, Ed started down, feeling the weight of all 26 lives on his shoulders. Above them, the kidnappers slammed the trap door. The clang echoed like a death knell. Darkness swallowed them whole. The darkness was complete, so thick it was like a living thing, pressed close against every child's skin. The air felt colder down here, but thicker too, heavy with the breath and fear of dozens. The sound of the trap door slamming above their heads echoed, a final, brutal punctuation mark. For a while, nobody made a sound. It was as if they were underwater or on another planet, the noise of their own panic muffled and distant. Ed Ray crouched low, his knees already aching from the descent. He tried to focus his senses. Smell, dirt, sweat, rot, touch, the rough edges of plywood, hearing, breath, sniffles, the shifting weight of children all around him. He couldn't see a thing. He reached out until his hand brushed a small, trembling shoulder. "It's me. It's Ed," he whispered, low and firm. "I'm here." Angela tried to count heads in the dark, brushing fingers over knees and arms, as if she could build a picture out of touch. Emily? Grace? Jeff? Each name was met with a sob, a hiccup, a trembling, "I'm here." Mike felt the earth press down on him, the literal suffocating weight of it overhead. He counted off each name he could remember, afraid that saying them out loud might break the spell, afraid that if he missed even one, it would mean someone was lost forever. He pressed Mary to his side, feeling her heart race against his ribs. "Breathe with me," he murmured, making his own breath slow and loud. In, out, in, out. It steadied him as much as it steadied her. Suddenly a flashlight flickered on, weak and yellow, casting monstrous shadows on the walls. Ed Ray's face loomed into view for a moment, lines of sweat tracing his cheeks, mouth set in grim determination. "We need to keep calm," he said. "Nobody's getting left behind. Nobody!" Lisa started to wail, a sound sharp and rising, like a kettle boiling. Angela crawled to her, wrapping arms tight around her shaking frame. "It's going to be okay. I promise. You're not alone." The words felt empty, but Lisa clung to them like a lifeline. Someone coughed, a dry, rasping hack. The air already tasted wrong, metallic and stale. A boy, Jeff, scrabbled at the wall, fingernails peeling splinters from the plywood. "There's no way out," he gasped, panic rising. "We're buried! We're buried! We're going to—" Ed slid across the dirt and put his big hand over Jeff's, stopping him before he could hurt himself. "Hey, we're not dead, son. Listen to me. We're still breathing. That's what matters." Mike squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the urge to scream. In the trembling light, he could just make out the shadowy vent pipes poking through the roof. "They left us air," he said, voice rough. "If they wanted us dead, they'd have just shot us. They want something. Money, maybe. We just have to stay alive." Angela's anger broke through her fear. "They can't just leave us here. My dad will find us. The police. Everyone in Chowchilla's looking by now. They'll come. They have to." Her words echoed, but no one answered. A thud sounded above, muffled and strange. Then the scrape of dirt, a heavy, sick sound as shovelfuls of earth hit the metal roof. The children all flinched, some burying their faces, others pressing their bodies flat against the floor, as if they could make themselves vanish. Ed listened to the dirt piling up, and his heart lurched with a terror he fought to keep from showing. "Everyone, listen. We stick together. We keep talking. We stay awake. No giving up. Understand?" Whimpers, nods, a chorus of shivering voices. Mike, clutching his sister, looked around at the others and made himself stand. "We have to make a plan. We can't just wait to die." His voice cracked, but it was a spark in the dark. Angela nodded. "If anyone feels dizzy, or if someone starts to faint, say something. We'll save the water, okay? Make it last." Ed forced a smile he didn't feel. "Smart girl," he rasped. "We're gonna need all our smarts." The light faded. The battery was dying. In the new darkness, children drifted into restless, haunted sleep, crying, shivering, mumbling to ghosts in dreams. Ed stayed awake, counting and recounting, whispering to each child he could reach. He pictured his wife, his house, the fields outside. He prayed, without words, just desperate hope. Above, the dirt kept falling. Every sound was a countdown. In the earth, the children learned what it was to be afraid of the dark. There was no sense of time, only darkness, sweat, and the endless thick press of bodies. The world above was gone. Down here, every minute stretched into agony. At first, the children called for their mothers. Some shouted until their voices cracked, banging on the plywood walls, their fists leaving bloody smears. The noise was animal, wild, a pack of trapped creatures. But the trailer swallowed every sound, and the dirt above muffled any hope that someone, somewhere, might hear them. Lisa sat hunched beside Angela, hands pressed so tight to her ears she couldn't hear her own sobs. Angela stroked her hair and tried to breathe slow, deep breaths. "It's just a bad dream," Angela whispered over and over. "It's just a bad dream." But she didn't believe it. Ed Ray moved through the dark as best he could, his big hands reaching, finding shoulders, hair, trembling hands. "Let's count off," he rasped, forcing his voice to be calm. "Start with me. 1, Mike answered, shaky but steady. 2, Mary, clinging to Mike's arm. 3, Jeff, voice breaking. 4. They went around, numbers anchoring them to the world, to one another. 27, including Ed. Nobody missing. Still together. But the darkness pressed in, thicker by the hour. The air grew foul, hot, heavy, stinging with the stink of sweat, urine, fear. Someone vomited, and the smell settled over the group like a blanket. The youngest wet themselves, crying in shame, too weak to care about anything but the terror inside their bodies. A boy named Travis started to babble about monsters in the walls, scraping his fingernails against the wood until they bled. "They're coming for us," he muttered. "We're never getting out." Angela slapped him, hard, the sound loud in the silence. "Stop it! Just stop!" Travis burst into tears. Lisa hugged him, both of them shaking. Ed fought back his own panic. His throat felt raw, his lungs heavy. He pressed his ear to the roof, listening. Above, the scraping and shoveling had stopped. He imagined the men walking away, the dirt settling, the sun moving across the sky. He wondered if it was day or night. He wondered if he'd ever see the sky again. Mike tried to keep busy, organizing the older kids. "We have to save water, no more than a sip every hour." He passed around the bottle, warm, plastic, metallic tasting. The crackers, stale and dry, choked the youngest. But hunger was nothing compared to thirst, and nothing compared to the fear that gnawed at all of them. Ed checked the pipes, 2 narrow vents sticking up through the dirt above. He ran his fingers along the edges, feeling for cracks, for cool air. One pipe rattled when he shook it but wouldn't budge. Angela crawled along the wall, feeling for seams. "There's got to be something," she muttered. "A way out. They can't just leave us here forever." Someone started to pray. "Hail Mary, full of grace." The words wove through the dark, a fragile thread. Mike found Lisa staring at a spot in the corner, where the floor met the wall. "There's a gap," she whispered, barely audible. "I can feel air." She dug her fingernails into the plywood, scraping splinters into her skin. Ed crawled over, feeling alongside her. There, a section of wood, slightly warped. He pushed, hard. The panel creaked, dust sifting down into his hair. Angela joined, using her nails to pry at the edge. For the first time since the nightmare began, something changed, a tiny, ragged hope. But every push let in more dirt, the trailer shuddering with the shifting weight above. Lisa recoiled, coughing as a spray of soil hit her face. Mike threw his arms around her, pulling her back. "Slow," Ed warned. "If we're not careful, we'll bring the whole damn roof down." Angela wiped sweat from her brow, cheeks streaked with tears and grime. "We can't stop. We have to try." The children watched, hollow-eyed, as the oldest worked in silence. Every scrape, every shift was a gamble, freedom or a grave. When they couldn't pry anymore, Ed wrapped his arm around Lisa. "We'll keep at it, one step at a time. You hear me?" His voice was gravel, but it held steady. Above, silence. Below, a stubborn, desperate hope. That night some children dreamed of rescue. Some dreamed of Earth swallowing them whole. But for the first time, a few dared to imagine light, air, and the world above. The darkness did not soften. Hours blurred and bled, measured only by the rise and fall of children's voices, by thirst, by fear. Somewhere overhead life was going on. Dinners cooked, dogs barking, parents calling. But here, time folded in on itself. There was no night or day, only suffering and survival. It began with thirst. After a while, it was all anyone could talk about. Lips cracked and tongues stuck to the roofs of dry mouths. When Mike handed Mary the water bottle, one tiny sip, just enough to wet her lips, she sobbed quietly, head pressed to his chest. "Pass it," Angela ordered, voice hoarse. "No more than a mouthful, or we'll run out." The bottle made its slow journey around the room, each child desperate, some holding the water in their cheeks, reluctant to swallow. Jeff tried to sneak an extra sip. Angela snatched it away, glaring. "We all need it, Jeff, even you." Ed watched over them, exhaustion weighing heavy on his bone. He pressed his ear to the plywood roof again, searching for sound, anything, but the world above was silent as the grave. He tried to keep busy, crawling from child to child, whispering names, telling them to squeeze his hand if they could hear him. A feverish boy named Danny started muttering nonsense. Something about Disneyland, about his mother's pancakes, about monsters with shovels for hands. His words ran together, growing frantic. "Don't let them dig us deeper, Ed. Please, don't let them—" His voice broke, and Ed pressed a hand to the boy's forehead. Hot as an iron. Delirious. Angela knelt next to Danny, wiping his brow with a crusty scrap of shirt. "Shh, Danny. Think about something good. What's your favorite thing in the world?" He mumbled. "My dog, my birthday cake." Angela squeezed his hand. "Picture that cake, candles, everyone singing. Hold on to that, okay?" Lisa, trembling, clung to Angela's free arm. She stared into the dark, rocking herself, humming under her breath, nursery songs, then nothing, then a brittle silence. Time lost all meaning. Some children tried to sleep, but every sound, each cough, every whimper, the slap of someone's hand against the wall, jerked them awake. A few drifted into dreams that weren't much better than the nightmare around them. One girl awoke screaming, convinced her legs were buried, that she was turning to dirt. Angela snapped at her. "You're here! You're alive! Breathe!" The older children, Mike, Angela, Emily, did what they could. They made up stories, told jokes, sang quiet, shaky songs. "I spy with my little eye," Mike started, and for a moment, it was almost normal. Emily made the younger ones guess the color of hope, of home, of sky. Ed sat at the back, knees drawn up, eyes burning. He thought about his wife, about the promise he'd made to bring every child home. He tried to count off their names, but his mind was thick with fog. "Hang on," he whispered to himself. "Just a little longer." Sometimes something shifted above, a faint, distant thump. Was it help? Was it the kidnappers or the police? Hope rose, cruel and sharp, then faded into silence. Hours, maybe days, passed like this. They rationed food, crumbs of crackers pressed into hungry mouths. They whispered prayers, made pacts. "We stick together," Mike said, "or none of us gets out." At one point, Angela tried the plywood panel again. She scraped her fingernails raw, but it wouldn't move. Lisa pressed her ear to the crack, breathing in the faintest trace of cooler air. "It's still there," she said, a ghost of hope. "It's still there." In the end, it wasn't courage or cleverness that kept them alive. It was the small things. A hand held tight in the dark, the sharing of a last sip of water, the promise that none of them would be left behind. Ed's voice, raspy, almost gone, was the last thing many children heard before drifting off. "I'm here. You're not alone. We'll see the sun again. I swear it." And so they waited and survived, hour by hour, breath by breath, beneath a world that had no idea they were still alive. The moon was gone, swallowed by clouds. Out in the gravel pit, the world was little more than shadows and headlights, and the raw scrape of shovels against earth. Frederick Woods's hands shook as he shoveled dirt, sweat beading under his mask. The other two men, James and Richard Schoenfeld, brothers since birth, partners since bad decisions started to pile up, worked beside him, their silence punctured only by labored breath. "Keep digging," Fred hissed, glancing over his shoulder at the half-buried moving truck. "We need more dirt on top," James grunted. His shoulders burned with each shovelful, but he didn't stop. He was thinking of the voices from inside the trailer, high and muffled. The youngest kids begging, the bus driver barking out orders. "We shouldn't have picked so many," he muttered, almost to himself. "It's too much. We can't control this." Richard Younger wiped sweat from his face. His stomach churned with adrenaline and guilt. He kept his head down, shovel moving, jaw tight. "It's done, Fred. We need to go before someone hears." But Fred's mind was racing. The plan had sounded brilliant in his father's study. Take a busload of kids, bury them alive, demand millions in ransom. The world would pay to get them back. But now, with sirens in the distant night and the ground trembling beneath his boots, it felt like the edge of disaster. He tossed his shovel down and fumbled in his pocket for the ransom note. Written, rewritten, never sent. Their call to the Chowchilla police had been jammed. Lines busy, the whole town on the phone. He cursed under his breath. "We'll try again from the motel. Just finish." The brothers heaved the last shovelfuls of earth atop the trailer's roof. The vent pipes stuck up like gravestones in the moonlight. Woods paused, staring at them. "They'll have air," he said, like it was a kindness. "They'll live." James spat on the ground, hating the feel of the mask. "If you say so." The pit was silent now, the only sound the settling dirt and the distant whine of a coyote. Inside the truck, the children huddled together. The world was shrinking, the air thicker, panic seeping through the cracks. Ed Ray pressed his ear to the wall, listening. For a moment, he thought he heard footsteps. Then nothing. Mary whimpered in the dark. "Are they coming back?" Mike held her tight. "They're gone. We're still here. That's what matters." Above them, Woods and the Schoenfelds loaded their shovels, gloves, and leftover supplies into their van. They peeled off their masks, their faces pale, drawn, and slick with sweat. None of them could meet the other's eyes. Richard stared back at the half-buried trailer, a shadow against the quarry's edge. "They're just kids, Fred." Woods's jaw worked, no answer coming. They drove away, tires spinning, van fishtailing in the loose gravel. The gravel pit swallowed their tracks. The world was silent, but for the faint, muffled sound of children breathing under the earth. For the first time, Woods let himself shiver. No matter how far he drove, he knew what they'd done would haunt them forever. The darkness was a beast, breathing in and out with every terrified child inside the buried trailer. The air, thick with sweat and fear, pressed down on them like a second layer of dirt. The youngest had given up screaming, their voices gone to hoarse whispers. The older kids stared wide-eyed into the black, minds grinding through every nightmare story they'd ever heard. But Mike Marshall wasn't ready to give up. He pressed his palms to the plywood wall, feeling for anything, movement, a shift, even the tiniest draft. "There has to be a way," he muttered. His arms ached, but the sting of splinters in his fingers was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. Ed Ray was watching, propped up against the vent pipe, his face pale and lined, every breath a struggle. He nodded to Mike, voice sandpaper rough. "If you find anything, tell me." We do it together. Angela, determined, crawled over. "I want to help. I'm not just going to sit here and wait." They began to search, inch by inch, their hands crawling over wood, metal, and each other's knees. Lisa, eyes swollen, clung to Angela's side, but reached her own trembling hand out. The group needed a purpose. Desperation was a kind of fuel. "Here," Mike hissed, his breath catching. He'd found the place where Lisa had felt the draft before, a seam in the back corner, where the plywood sagged and flexed beneath his touch. Angela pressed her ear to the wood. She felt the tiniest tickle of air, cool and miraculous. "It's real," she whispered, hope lighting her face. "It's real." The older kids gathered what little they had. Food crates, dirty mattresses, anything to stack and press against the wall for leverage. Mike wedged his shoulder into the seam, pushing with every ounce of his wiry strength. The panel shifted, not much, but enough to let in a spatter of gritty dirt. "We have to be careful," Ed warned, the leader's edge in his voice. "Too much and the roof comes down on us." But caution was almost impossible. Hope had made them frantic. Angela dug with her nails, prying and scraping, wincing as she broke the skin. Lisa helped, her small hands trembling but determined. The others passed back a flashlight, the beam flickering as the battery faded. In its dim glow, their faces were hollow-eyed, streaked with tears and grime, but alive with purpose. Ed joined, his hands shaking, and together they worked, pushing, pulling, scraping at the weak spot until, at last, a splintered chunk broke loose. Dirt cascaded in, making them cough and choke, but with it came a sharper, stronger draft of fresh air. For the first time, the darkness didn't feel absolute. There was a direction to it, a way up, a way out. The little one started to cry again, but this time with something like relief. "We're going to get out of here," Mike said, his voice ragged but fierce. Angela squeezed his shoulder. "One more push. We have to make it bigger, big enough for all of us." But it was slow going. The earth above was heavy and shifted with every movement, threatening to cave in. Each time they paused to rest, their hearts hammered with dread. What if they'd only made it worse? What if rescue was already on its way, and they'd ruined their only chance? Still, they worked. Each inch gained was a tiny rebellion against the fear, against the men who had left them for dead. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. The darkness made it impossible to know. At last, as Mike clawed another handful of dirt away, a sharp sliver of light speared through the hole. It was only the palest gray, filtered through layers of earth, but to the kids, it was more blinding than sunlight. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. Ed's voice broke the silence, full of tears he didn't bother to hide. "We're not dead yet. We're not giving up." The children pressed in closer, dirt in their hair and hope in their eyes. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was the first real crack in the darkness, and they weren't going to let it close. The crack they'd made in the wall became their lifeline, and their obsession. Mike was the first to claw at the dirt with both hands, splinters slicing his fingers raw. Each handful of soil brought a surge of hope, but also fresh terror. The trailer shuddered, earth raining down, the space shrinking and shifting with every breath. Angela scraped with him, her nails torn and bleeding. "Don't stop," she panted. "If we stop, we die here." Ed Ray, his face streaked with sweat and grime, watched over the children, rotating the oldest through shifts at the hole. The youngest huddled together, wide-eyed and silent, while the older kids worked in a kind of fever. Every inch gained meant more air, sharper, cooler, a taste of freedom. Lisa squeezed through the crowd, crawling to the edge of the hole. "Let me help," she whispered. Mike wanted to protect her, but in that moment, every hand counted. The children rotated, working in pairs, sweat pouring down their faces. Some choked on the dust, eyes stinging. Others retched from the effort, but none of them stopped. At one point, The earth above shifted dangerously, the roof groaning. A cascade of dirt poured down, half burying Mike. He gasped, flailing, but Angela and Ed hauled him out, coughing and shaking. "Slow down!" Ed barked, his voice cracking. "We can't rush it. We have to do this smart." Mike spat out a mouthful of dirt. "Sorry, I just—" Ed gripped his shoulder, steadying him. "You saved us, son. Now let's all save each other." Time melted, each moment stretching and breaking. The only sounds were breathing, scraping, the muffled sobs of the youngest. As the gap widened, a shaft of gray light spilled into the trailer, sharp and holy. The first cool breeze in hours swept through, tasting of outside, of sky, of the world they barely remembered. Angela's eyes filled with tears. "Look, look!" Lisa reached for the light, her face smudged and shining. "It's real," she breathed. "It's real." The final barrier was a heavy steel manhole cover, wedged above the trailer's roof. Ed and Mike, arms trembling with fatigue, braced themselves against the plywood and heaved together. The cover shrieked against rust, moving only an inch. Again, bodies pressed together, grunting, the sound of the group's will against the weight of earth. At last, with one final desperate shove, the cover slid aside. The world above exploded into view. White-hot sunlight, blinding, dazzling, alive. For a moment, the children just stared. Then Mike scrambled up, his body half falling, half clawing through the earth, and burst out onto the quarry floor. He gasped for breath, sunlight burning his skin. One by one, Ed lifted the smallest through the hole. Lisa, then Mary, then Jeff, their hands reaching for Mike, for the sky, for hope. Angela hauled herself up, tears streaking her dirt-caked cheeks. Ed was the last, his legs barely working, but he forced himself through, dragging the last child behind. The world outside was silent. No kidnappers, no police. Just the blue bowl of sky, the pit yawning behind them, the impossible freedom of open air. The children staggered to their feet, blinking in the blinding light, arms slung over each other's shoulders. They were filthy, battered, exhausted, but they were alive. Lisa sobbed, not out of fear but relief. Angela laughed, a harsh, wild sound. Mike threw his head back and shouted, the noise echoing across the empty quarry. Ed sank to his knees, eyes squeezed shut, a prayer on his lips. "We made it," he whispered. "We made it out." They were alone, but for the first time since the nightmare began, the world belonged to them again. For a long moment, the survivors just stood there, squinting and shivering in the blinding sun. The quarry was empty. No shovels, no kidnappers, only heat shimmering on pale dirt, and the broken outline of machinery at the pit's edge. Mike was the first to move, stumbling forward on shaky legs. He took a deep breath, the air sharp and alive in his lungs, and nearly collapsed. Angela caught him, half laughing, half sobbing, her tears streaking the dirt on her face. Lisa crawled from the edge of the hole, blinking up at the sky. For a heartbeat, she covered her eyes, unable to believe it was real. Then she saw a single green weed pushing through the gravel, and for some reason, that, more than the sun or the sky, made her start to cry. Ed Ray pushed himself to his feet, every joint aching, every muscle on fire. He counted the children by instinct. 1, 2, 3, 26, all present, all alive. His chest filled with something like joy and grief all at once. Mary tugged at Mike's hand, her voice small. "Are we really out?" "We're out," he said, hugging her, holding on so tight neither could breathe. They didn't know how long they wandered the pit, blinking and shuffling, dazed and silent. Dust clung to every inch of them. Sweat dried on their skin. For a while, the only sound was their footsteps and the echo of someone's soft, disbelieving laugh. A distant engine rumbled. The kids froze, fear twisting their faces. but it was just a battered pickup bouncing along the service road, 2 quarry workers inside. The driver slammed on the brakes, mouth open in shock. The passenger leaped out, staring. Are you the missing kids?" he stammered. Angela nodded, too exhausted to speak. She tried to smile and failed. Within minutes, the air was full of sirens. First a single police cruiser, then a rush of red and blue lights, then the shriek of ambulance brakes. Paramedics ran toward them, medical kits clattering. Voices blurred, orders were shouted, and the children were herded into the back of ambulances, blankets thrown over their shoulders. Someone pressed a water bottle into Ed's hand. He tried to drink, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mike and Mary clung to each other, silent and stunned. Lisa sat beside Angela in the ambulance, a paramedic shining a flashlight into their eyes. "How many?" the woman asked, clipboard ready. 26, Angela croaked. "And Ed. He saved us." The news traveled faster than any police radio. By the time the convoy of ambulances rolled through the streets of Chowchilla, the town was already waiting. Parents pressed to barricades, reporters jostling for a glimpse, neighbors waving signs, hands over mouths in prayer. The doors swung open. Mrs. Marshall spotted Mike and screamed his name, crashing through the crowd. She nearly knocked the paramedics aside as she wrapped her arms around him and Mary, weeping uncontrollably. Frank Gonsalves crushed Angela in a bear hug, his own face streaked with tears he'd never admit to in the daylight. Ed Ray was ushered through the chaos, police and doctors shouting questions, camera flashes bursting like fireworks. "I did what I could," he repeated, dazed. "I kept counting, never lost one." Inside the hospital, order slowly returned. IVs, checklists, whispered reassurances. The children were weighed and measured, examined for wounds, for shock, for dehydration and sunburn. Some flinched at the sound of carts in the hallway. Others just stared at the ceiling, wide-eyed, unwilling to believe the nightmare was finally over. On the hospital TV, a reporter announced, "Chowchilla's missing children found alive after being buried underground for over 16 hours. Miraculously, all survived." But for the children, the nightmare had not ended. The sun was too bright, the world too loud, and every closed door felt like another trap. They drifted in and out of sleep, haunted by dreams of darkness and dirt. Still, as parents held their children, and as Ed Ray finally let his guard down and wept, a strange new feeling filled the rooms of the Chowchilla Hospital, a feeling none of them dared to trust. Hope. The story blazed across the country like wildfire. 26 kids buried alive. All survive. News vans circled Chowchilla's dusty streets, satellites blossoming from their roofs, anchors in shirt sleeves frowning earnestly at the cameras. The faces of the rescued children, Ed Ray, and frantic parents stared out from every TV and newspaper. The world wanted villains, heroes, a miracle, and someone to blame. But in the hospital's hushed halls, there was only exhaustion and the endless buzz of questions. FBI agents in crisp suits filed through one after another, asking the same things. What did the men look like? What did they say? Did anyone see a license plate? Ed Ray told his story 100 times, his voice growing more haunted with each retelling. 3 men, blue van, one with a shotgun, one with a revolver, one with a clipboard. His hands shook. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the dirt falling on the trailer roof. Mike, Angela, Lisa, and the others answered in soft, shaky voices, clutching parents' hands. Mary wouldn't let go of her brother's shirt, not for a second. The FBI didn't sleep. They tracked the moving truck's plates to a San Jose rental agency. The rental agent remembered the man, nervous, rich boy voice, ID with the name Frederick Woods. An agent in a blue suit pinned his photo to the board, next to 2 others, James and Richard Schoenfeld. All 3 had criminal records. All 3 were from wealthy families, the kind used to hiding mistakes behind money and lawyers. The manhunt went national. Police raided Woods' father's estate, an enormous, lonely mansion outside Livermore, surrounded by fields and rusted farm equipment. Inside a dusty bedroom, they found a briefcase full of ransom notes, hand-drawn maps of the quarry, shopping lists, food, water, vent pipe, plywood, shovels. One ransom note, never sent, began, "We have taken the children. We want $5 million. No police or else." James and Richard Schoenfeld were caught first, found hiding at their parents' house, haggard and silent. Woods had vanished, slipping through a network of family and friends. As the children were released from the hospital, the town held its breath. Parades were planned, prayers offered, awards minted. Ed Ray was called a hero. There were interviews, medals, keys to the city. But at night, he lay awake, counting children in the dark. Angela, Mike, Lisa, and the others gave interviews, their faces pale and shy beneath the TV lights. Some could talk about what happened, others shut down, staring at their hands or hiding behind their mothers. When Frederick Woods was finally found, cowering in a relative's cabin near Yosemite, his capture made national news. The three men, faces pale and glassy-eyed, were brought to trial in matching orange jumpsuits. The courtroom was packed. The children's families filled every row, their eyes full of rage and questions. During the trial, the prosecutor described the plot in chilling detail. The months of planning, the supplies, the cold calculations. The judge stared down at Woods and the Schoenfeld brothers. "You buried children alive," he said, his voice trembling. "You left them to die in the dark." The world watched as the verdicts came in. Guilty. Life in prison. No parole. For a moment, justice felt real. But for the children of Chowchilla and for Ed Ray, closure was more complicated. Some nightmares could not be locked away. Some wounds, invisible, never fully healed. Yet in the heart of the valley, beneath the endless sky, Chowchilla exhaled. A long, slow breath, relief and grief tangled together. For months after the rescue, the children slept with the lights on. Parents took turns sitting by their beds, holding hands until the nightmares faded, if they ever really did. The newspapers called them the Chowchilla survivors. They got parades, keys to the city, medals pressed into trembling palms. Cameras captured forced smiles, but nothing could erase the shadows under their eyes. Ed Ray was called a hero, and he wore the title with the quiet humility of a man who never asked for it. But late at night, when the house was dark, he would sit at the kitchen table, staring at the pattern of moonlight on the wall. He counted the children again and again and again, until he could fall asleep. At Dairyland Elementary, teachers tried to bring back normalcy, but when the bell rang for recess, some kids flinched. When a substitute bus driver filled in, a few simply refused to board. Angela's parents enrolled her in therapy, where she drew endless pictures of ladders, sunlight, and doors. Mike stopped talking for a while. Lisa wet the bed for months. The town tried to move forward, but the sense of safety, the innocence, never returned completely. Parents hovered closer. School bus routes changed. Almond trees grew taller, but the shadow of the quarry never faded. As the years passed, the story changed shape. It became something told in whispers, then on anniversaries, then in history books. Some of the children grew up to become parents themselves. Some moved far away, changing their names, cutting ties with the town that had both broken and saved them. A few leaned into the fame, speaking at survivor events or to reporters. Most just wanted to forget. Lisa, as an adult, described the sound of dirt falling on the trailer roof as the moment childhood ended. She never liked small spaces, or crowds, or the dark. Angela went to college out of state, returned home to take care of her parents, and, sometimes, on bad nights, called the other survivors just to hear a familiar voice. Mike became a teacher. He watched the classroom windows the way Ed Ray once watched the bus mirror, always counting, always making sure no one was left behind. Ed Ray retired a local legend. When he died, the town filled the church with flowers, lining up to thank him for every child he'd saved. The children, grown, scattered, older now than he ever was that day, stood in the pews, heads bowed, carrying the weight of that afternoon in their bones. The kidnappers, locked away, faded from public memory, but for the survivors, the past never truly left. The story lived on in scar tissue, in quiet moments, in the hush before sleep. But there was more than trauma. There was a stubborn hope, proof that even in darkness, even when buried alive, children can claw their way back into the sun. Even broken things can grow, can laugh again, can make the world safer for those who come after. Every July, someone placed flowers at the old bus stop, the petals bright against the dust and heat. Every summer the town remembered, and every year, a new teacher would read the story aloud, not for the horror, but for the truth. That courage sometimes looks like holding hands in the dark, refusing to let go. And so the children of Chowchilla grew up, not untouched, but unbroken.